Go ahead, Dr. Goshia.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody, to the March 26th monthly meeting of the Citizens Police Review Board. I want to welcome everybody, and we will get started with the agenda. So I think we have one excused member tonight. Sheldon Williams, Mr. Sheldon Williams is unable to make it. About a week ago or so, you should have received your minutes from the February 27th board, and we need to approve those minutes as a matter of order. Did everybody get to review those minutes? All right, so do we have a motion on the floor?
Make a motion to approve the previous minutes.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second it.
All right. Did we get that, Madam Secretary?
Yes.
Any comments? All in favor? Denote by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The minutes have passed. All right, so the proceedings will go as such. It'll be our board minutes, our chair report, review of cases, and we will keep the announcements, the public comment at the end of the meeting. You'll have 3 minutes. If you would like to speak, if you could either use the chat and let us know that you would like to speak and identify yourself, that would be great. Alrighty, my report is that I would like to let everybody know that the board had an opportunity to meet in executive session, and that meeting did take place and minutes have been taken. So anybody have any questions? Okay. Without further ado, Executive Director Beth, would you like to give your report?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. And good evening, everyone. And it really is wonderful to see Mr. Robinson. It's nice to see all of you, of course, but we've been missing him. My report is fairly light this month. Our intake thus far, year to date, is 44 complaints. We have no time extinguished complaints, and that's unusual. We usually have 1 or 2 of them, but we do not. We only had 2 out of jurisdiction complaints among those 44. Last month we talked about the rationale behind the Bureau's decision with their reorganization and the redeployment of their resources. And we did make a request of the Bureau for the information that underlay the decision making, the data driven, what was that data and how it sorted out across the zones. And they were very gracious and out of courtesy did respond by yesterday, which was the day we requested it to be provided so that we could come back to you tonight. Unfortunately, because we just received it yesterday, as requested, my cursory look at it suggests that clearly the rationale behind the decisions made, it was rational. It made sense when you look at the data reflected in the number of calls, number of officers, the time of day by 24 hours, and the adjustment for the 10-hour day shifts. As I said, a cursory look at it, it makes sense. But what we're hearing grumblings about is on the qualitative side. And we have to figure in the unpredictability of policing. So I would ask that I could come back next month with a more in-depth, and perhaps we could have the chief or an assistant chief come and engage in discussion about it. If we were to see something or learn between now and then that there are other issues related to the redeployment. I'm sure you all saw media reports related to the closure of Zone 3 last week. Someone looking for PFA service, those odd kinds of things that do come up because it's an unpredictable thing. It's not a science. It's not something that just goes along unspecified details. It happens because the human condition happens. So we'd like to learn a little bit more about the citizens' experience with the redeployment. But we see those as more to be aberrations than the routine, but we need some time to evaluate that. But we did have very good information. They were very thorough, and I just extend our appreciation to the Bureau for gathering that information on relatively short notice and providing it to us. The other issue, well, do you have any questions about that, about the redeployment, the reorganization, the data behind it, other than what I've already offered you?
Your cursory didn't bring anything out to light quickly, right? It appeared.
I think the number of calls, when you analyze it by hour, it's clear they considered that when they scheduled officers, and the overlap time, it all makes sense. The time when everybody is working, I believe it's the weekday is a Wednesday, I think, is, as I recall, where they're all working, because now they're on the 4-hour or the 4 10-hour days, and they have 3 pass days, which that's fairly routine now, built into their schedules, and there's consistency to it. So I guess, Dr. Gershio, what I'd say is what struck me was the consistency to all of it, as opposed to more of a very chaotic kind of scheduling and deployment and that sort of thing. Not saying that it was not reasonable the old way, that, you know, they did their coverage, they had their hours, they had the pass days built in. But this is very consistent. It's much cleaner in terms of data analysis and scheduling. They built in time that will allow for the training. You remember, there's mandatory training that every officer has to receive on an annual basis. That was always a problem, to try to schedule officers to be able to incorporate their training without being short somewhere. So there's a lot of thought that's gone into this redeployment. I have to give them credit for that. There are going to be issues, though. I mean, that's just kind of natural. And whether they have the capacity to fully respond and meet those needs as they come up sporadically. If you have a major fire, a major crash, and a homicide somewhere all at one time, then from 3 to 7 a.m., you're going to be a little shorter than you would have been perhaps in the old way. But those are unusual circumstances, but they do happen. So we just want to take a better look at that part of it, meeting those kinds of needs. Do they have the capacity to do that? They say they do. But we would like to look at it a little bit more detailed.
Numbers is always that's where I think we can look at that stuff. I think we have the hand up of Mr. Davis and Mr. Robinson's. Mr. Davis, I saw your hand first.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My only question is there going to be, I don't know if you said it or not, is there going to be data tracking the changes, especially with all these changes being made on the force? And is there a point, whether it's 6 months down the road, with these changes, if they are tracked, if a report is going to be generated, just to see the impact not only has it had on the officers because of the shift to the 10 hours, but also the Pittsburgh community at large, as far as how services are being given out because of the
Absolutely
shortage.
From the beginning, and we had that discussion with the chief over the planning time, that the data that they analyzed was a longitudinal look at what were the needs and how can they meet those needs. going forward, once you've done that, you're going to have to evaluate with the same methodology as you established it. And so a longitudinal look back at it over a 6-month period. I'm not sure what the chief's timeline is, but yes, we would like to do that. We just have to design how we would go about doing it. But my understanding is that they are going to evaluate it in a similar way as they established it. So they will be looking, the crime analysis unit will be looking at number of calls for services, the responses, and whether it's working or not. And that's the thing about it. You have to go back to a baseline, and that baseline has to be consistent with when you come out, whatever period of time you go longitudinally, you have to be able to look back towards that baseline to see if anything has changed. Otherwise, it's apples and oranges. So we have to give it time. We have to give it a reasonable period of time before we can evaluate whether if it's efficient and if it's efficacious to meet the needs of the people of the city. So that, yes, that's the answer, Mr. Davis. Yes.
Mr. Robinson.
Yeah, I'll just share. I was fortunate to hear the chief come out to Brighton Heights to our community meeting a couple weeks ago, and he really did go. He dove deep into why they did some of the things they did, and several of the issues that I might have had, and I heard other people's also had. He definitely seemed to address them, and I know you guys want to look at what he just shared, the actual data, but I will share this one of the anecdotes he shared, and you did reference one of the reasons for this was officer wellness. And one of the things he shared was the number of calls that officers were handling overnight obviously is drastically lower than the officers during the day. And so part of that was just an equity thing. Like, how do we expect officers to handle, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 times the amount of calls on a shift than their counterparts? And so they did look at that data. So I'm sure that is in there. But one of the big pieces he did say was about officer wellness, and just the nature of the calls that they get. And I think the other issue I think you might talk about shortly, Director Pittenger, is about the telephone reporting. He explained that, which was in some vivid details of why they're doing some of those changes. I think if I don't know, fortunate to get him to speak to us, or if it's just going to be us looking at the data. But it as you said, it definitely made sense. I could see why they did what they did.
Yeah, that's the cursory review of that data certainly backs that up, Mr. Robinson. And you're quite correct that he has emphasized officer wellness as being a major determining factor in the scheduling model. And I mean, to be fair, we're hearing some grumblings about officers being tired, and they thinking now maybe the 10-hour day wasn't such a great idea. But again, those are lifestyle changes that we all need to accommodate and adjust to. So we'll see over that period of time where it's evaluated whether it remains desirable, and I suspect that it will be, but that it kind of the critics of it may fade away. It depends on how busy they are, I guess. And the telephone reporting unit has been enhanced, I think, to 23 or 24 call takers now. And and they provided the data for the number of calls that those call takers have been receiving, which is very interesting. I'm not sure I know or have the information for prior to the enhanced unit, but I'd have to look. And if we don't, we could probably get it if it seemed to be important enough to measure the before and the after. But they have extended that. And it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense given the shortage of officers, because we're still operating significantly below the authorized number of officers. And so there has to be some accommodation somewhere. And following up with people making the phone reports is something that we have to figure out if there's a way we can do that, or if they're collecting and we can learn from what they've collected. But it's a different it's a different unit now than it was before. They're fully staffed with people willing and able to take the phone calls from 7 a.m. to 3 a.m. So I would say confidently, it's a new type of service being offered to the public by the police. And of course, it'll take us a while to get accustomed to it, as it will be for them to integrate it into their daily practice. But it's, again, something that has to be evaluated. And how they're going to call through calls that are bad calls, or false calls. I don't understand that operationally yet, but I will try to understand that for next month.
Mr. Cutler,
Yes. Quick comment and two quick questions. That I keep hearing 3 a.m. What time is the TRU operating from 7 a.m. to 3 a.m., correct? That 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. window seems to be the wild card. And there's some concern for the lack of.
Mr. Cutler,
Yes.
may I interrupt you? David, are you on? Can you correct me? Is it 3 a.m. to 7 a.m.? Or no, 7 a.m. to 3 a.m. Is that did I call that right?
That's what I understand, Beth. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Cutler. I just wanted to be sure I
I've
didn't have my
seen
numbers
it.
reversed.
I've seen it one place other than the 3 a.m. to 7 a.m., but everything I've seen is 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. Or 7 a.m. to 3 a.m. I apologize. To where my takeaway from every time I see that is what's happening from 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. There's no coverage, it seems to be. But my questions are, who conducted the study and what other cities were their services purchased by? Do we know that?
You would be referring to the Matrix report that was generated a lot of controversy over the last year.
Alrighty.
There's been public claims that they're not following the recommendations of the Matrix report, but it seems as though many of those recommendations are consistent with what has been built into the reorganization of the Bureau. There are a lot. I do not know who else has purchased those services of Matrix. I think that's being looked at by other authorities because it was a no bid contract. It's worth noting that the recommendations that came out of the Matrix report were kind of obvious, that if you were going to reorganize the Bureau of Police, you would be doing those things that were recommended anyway, regardless of whether they recommended it or not. They're just kind of obvious. And as I said, they claim that they're not following that, though there were some good ideas in it, and the chief has implemented some of those ideas, not necessarily because it was part of that Matrix study. But I can certainly find out more for you on who else used those services, that consulting group. I think someone out west may have. I don't want to say that that's a fact because I'm not certain that it is.
And one
I'll
follow-up,
find out.
did we solicit that report, or did they solicit us?
Copy of it. I can provide a copy of it if you'd like.
Well, no, before the report was created, did they reach out to the city of Pittsburgh and say, we can offer you this report that's going to give you all this great information, or did we seek their services?
My understanding, my impression, better said, is that we went to them. I do not know if they solicited interest of the city. I don't know that. The $20,000, I think it was paid for that report, or 22,000, something like that. But at the end of the day, the issue was raised that it was not a project that was put out to no request for proposals from purveyors of the service. So I can't tell you which way it went, which way it started, but that's who did the project. And there is question about the propriety of which that project was awarded and paid.
The city, I know we had a discussion before, but help me recall this. Isn't there a dollar amount where the city is required to put something out for bid?
It's $20,000. Is that correct, Stephanie?
Oh,
It's over 25, anything over 25,000.
okay, so this came in under bid, so whether the chicken
let
or the
me-
egg came first, it was under the threshold. Is that the idea?
There's a question about that.
Okay.
You'll recall that this board attempted to secure the services of the Densis Group,
Yes.
and that was a flat rate of $25,000 for an extensive review of the police response to the post George Floyd homicide and protests and things of that nature. And we were held up for a year trying to get that secured, to get that report finished. And that was a flat rate of $25,000. Now, Ms. Hampton would probably know this better than I for factual purposes, that we were forced to put our project out,
Yes.
even though. So
Yes.
Was the cutoff raised since then, Stephanie?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, it could be, I have to double check, but I don't remember it being raised. The only thing that was raised was the off-contract prices, 3,000 to 5,000, but I'll double check and get back to you tomorrow, Beth.
Yeah, just do that. And members, we will provide that. And Mr. Kotler will certainly provide you a copy of the report. And these details will let everybody know in terms of who solicited whom and how it was paid for and why was there controversy attached to it.
Yeah, because I recall that ours hung out there for a very long time and then was dropped. And then all of a sudden there's a new matrix, and it now seems that it was underbid. I mean, it was under the threshold, like correct in that. So because it came in, or however it came in, but it came in under the threshold where it did not have to go out to bid. Is that the idea?
Yeah, but we'll check on that, Dr. Gershio.
Okay.
Whether there's an issue of it being a sole proprietor or not, we don't know. So sole provider of the expertise, we don't know, but we'll find out. We'll find out for you. I'm sorry, I didn't expect a question on it, so I'm not prepared. My
And
apologies.
you just got the report, so yeah, once you do your analysis, that'll help.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions around that, or? Okay, Beth, I'm sorry, you could continue then. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. The other issue that Mr. Davis brought up last week was related to our website, which has been, it was newly launched about a year and a half ago. It was a complete overhaul of the website that we had. And it contains an awful lot of information. Mr. Davis had some suggestions about looking at the chronology of the information that is available on the website. So what we did was we went through with staff to get an impression, what was outstanding and what do we want to go now that it's been out there for a while, and a look back and perhaps revisit. And the general consensus was there were two major issues: the chronology of the documents that are available on the site, and the redundancy of some of the documents and the information that's provided on each page and that sort of thing. So we have those two themes, I guess, the chronologies and the redundancies that we want to take a deeper look at. And then there was, we thought perhaps that members would like to do their own review, quick, down and dirty kind of review, that we could do a Survey Monkey on it. We could distribute a survey asking you for your priorities, what you would like to see when you go to the site, if you find it easy to navigate or not so easy, and what you would suggest in that regard. If there's something missing, what you would like to see there that's not there. So we could get your priorities for how you want your website to appear, and we can make those adjustments. That website was a labor of love from a lot of people. We put everything that somebody might be looking for up there somewhere. And that might be part of the navigation, but we would like to make sure that the priority matters are readily addressed, and then all the rest can be there, maybe tabbed a bit differently. I'm not sure. Our web guy did a fantastic job putting together the website after some frustrating years that we've had with the websites, including being hacked many years ago, and rebuilding and redesigning and redeploying the website. So in terms of websites, you can say it's relatively new, or you can say it's been up there long enough we should have known these things. We're not in and out of it on a regular basis, on a daily basis. And now when we go, we're accustomed to it. So we're not getting the first look at it and getting confused if that's what's happening, or getting lost in stuff if that's what's happening. I know the search function tends to bring back anything I'm looking for, but I'm not digging deep into, piles of documents and how they're arranged in the storage side that brings it forward. So anyway, would you be amenable to completing a survey and returning it to us so we can make this a project?
Absolutely.
Okay, we will do that between now and the next meeting.
Mr. Davis, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment, just by saying thank you. I think Ms. Pittenger hit the nail on the head as far as my conversation about this last time. It was just those two. It was nothing major that needed to be changed on the website, just those two critical functions of just being able to navigate, especially if people wanted to look at the historical context and data. Again, she hit the nail on the head. I know I had requested a meeting with Ms. Pittenger earlier. No unforeseen circumstances. We just hadn't been able to meet. So we could, I could show her from my view of what I was seeing. And I do look forward to having that conversation with her. Just so she can understand what I'm looking at. And that's where those little small adjustments need to take place.
Well, that'll be good, because you can put that in the survey. So that, the survey will get an overall view from all members. And, we have different ages, needs, desires, data we need. So if everybody could, in a few years, and I have been very remiss if we could just take a moment to acknowledge Mrs. Pittenger passed away a week or so ago, and Beth, our deepest sympathies to you.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
with the understanding that you take the time you need to, and then once this survey comes out, we will respond accordingly.
Okay, and thank you for acknowledging that, Dr. Gershio. I'll be back in Pittsburgh tomorrow, and then I will be back up to Mom's for the funeral next week. So in between, I'll try to get some of this stuff tended to and get something out to you so that for the next board meeting, we may actually have a report back, or at least we will have collected your thoughts. That'd be great.
Again, please remember to take this time for your family. And we're a week or two behind on this. It's not the end of the world.
And Beth, I can do whatever you need. If you can't, it's no problem at all. I know you won't step aside, but I'm just saying, we got you.
Thank you, Miss Hampton. I'm sure between us, we could get this together and out to the members. That'd be great. Thank you. And thank you again, Dr. Gershio. And that concludes my report. As I promised, it was light this month. And I'm, happy to take any questions or take note of anything that members might find deserving of our attention.
Anybody, comments, questions? Ready? I think we're getting ready for the case review, which is next on the agenda, I believe. And Stephanie will put them up for us so that everybody can refer to them. Hopefully you had an opportunity over the last few weeks to read the cases. And Stephanie, when you're ready. You. Alrighty, so we have 6 cases for full investigation. Case number 028-24 or 027-24. -017-24.
Zero-
025-24. I'm sorry, I missed that one. Sorry, guys. 016-24 and 014-24. Do I have a motion? Need a motion on this?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Questions?
I have one question with, could you scroll down a little bit? With the 07-24 Edwards. So once we make the, agree on the motion, is this discussion like over, like there's no discussion on this case at all? Because okay. I just wanted to know, like, how did they come to the conclusion that there's no case on this at all?
Who? The police
I don't know.
or our staff?
I'm just looking at the executive director's open inquiry into the incident on the West End Bridge. The EDI looked into PBB policies, procedures after, like, this is the end of this case. There's no investigation in this case.
This is going to full investigation.
Okay, thank you.
Next month. Yeah.
That's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. All right, we got to vote on that, right? All in favor?
Question.
Okay, yes.
Sorry. This may be, I don't know if it's appropriate for this moment. No, it's not appropriate for this moment. I'll just vote aye, but I think this might be under new business then, as far as my question will be.
All right. So we now have, let me get all your fine faces out of the way here so I can see this. All right, so we have, I think 30-day in,
We need a vote. I know you guys voted, but
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 No. Thanks for the reminder. Now we have, for 30-day extension, we have one, 30-day extension of full investigation, I'm sorry. Case number 012-24. Do I have a motion?
I make the motion.
Thank you. Second?
I second the motion.
Thank you. Discussion? Hearing none? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We have one case for unfounded And that's case number 155-23. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Discussion? Hearing none? All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. We have 4 cases that are unsustainable. That's case 106-23, 043-23, 029-23, and the last one, 025-23. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion.
All right, and we got a first and a second there, right? Discussion?
Quick question, under, if you could scroll up for me, the Tequila Cowboy, where it says, I was 043-23 under Hunt. I was just a little confused. Was this officer acting in the capacity as an active duty officer or an employee of the establishment? If that's a question for Mr. Hunt. For Hunt, sorry.
Are you perhaps seeking the distinction between a secondary detail and active duty assigned detail?
Correct. I mean, obviously, if that was the reasoning for it to being unsustainable, like, I guess I'm trying to get clarity, for this type of complaint, even though it's unsustainable. Is the reasoning because this would be, that's like, to your point, a secondary detail, because obviously officers can be hired by the establishment.
No.
This is for insufficient information or evidence determined by the subject officer.
I
Okay.
guess
What he's
maybe my
asking-
question's outside the scope. Then, like, I guess I'm putting a scenario based in this question. Then, if we don't, for us as this body, we are only reviewing officer misconduct as it relates to them being in uniform, or are we also taking a look at when they are out of uniform being paid by an establishment? Because to me, how it read, it almost felt like he was a part of the establishment, if that makes sense.
No, Dr. Gershio, may I offer an explanation here?
Please.
A secondary detail, officers are no longer hired directly by any establishment. There is established policy and procedure governing qualification to be available to do a secondary detail. And then you don't get your preference to say, well, I'm going to go down to Joe's bar and be their security detail. And Joe will pay me. It doesn't work that way anymore. Years ago it did, no longer so. They are in uniform. They cannot be working undercover as some private security and use their law enforcement power. In their secondary detail, they are acting under the color of law and they are in uniform. Our jurisdiction applies to Pittsburgh Bureau of Police officer operating under the color of law, whether they're in uniform or in plain clothes, and anything where it is because of their law enforcement qualification that they are engaged in an activity. So the officers are not privately employed by any establishment. And if they are qualified and enabled through policy to engage in secondary details, there are stringent guidelines around that. But it would still be in our purview to review the conduct of an officer in that capacity when there is a complaint filed against the officer in that capacity.
Thank you, Ms. Pitzinger.
And there was no reason this is not being recommended because he was because of his duty status.
More discussion before we take the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We have, I think the next are the reviews. Oh, I'm sorry, let me move sorry. You're all on my way here. Alrighty, we have one other, and it is case number 109-23. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Thank
A
you.
second.
Second. Thank you. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. We have one for suspension, and that is case number 193-23. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Second?
I'll
Second.
second it.
Thank you. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And that concludes the voting part of our case study. Or case review, I'm sorry. My education hat on there, case review. Alrighty, any old business? All right, and unfinished business. Any new business? Again, is the reminder, you bring up the new business, that it can be discussed, but cannot be deliberated. It can be introduced, I'm sorry, but it cannot be deliberated. So,
Mr. Davis has his hand up.
okay, Mr. Davis?
Thank you. I would like for us next month to discuss an overview of our complaint process, as well as how information is determined when it is introduced to us as members for when we do these case reviews, as far as our ability to make decisions on these cases, as well as the explanation as far as what is the current criteria or timeline for when cases do come into the CPRB.
We could certainly have that brought up, but a lot of that, if you check, it might even be on the website. I'm not recalling where, but anyway, since we can't deliberate, thank you for the introduction, and we can give you an overview of what an investigator does. Okay.
Chair, if I may offer information, the board's minimum timelines are addressed in the enabling ordinance, and they are promulgated in the rules and operating procedures of the board, which were vetted in the public and codified internally to establish those timelines based upon the ordinance. The findings of fact remains with board members at all times. The information that members are provided is that which is determined through review of evidence and what the investigation reveals. You are given information that is established as fact, not speculation or opinion. So I think if you want to, we can review the rules and operating procedures if that would be helpful. Perhaps we should consider having a training session. Mr. Ward, perhaps we could set aside a time when we could all get together and go through these things, because our new members haven't had a lot of experience with these things, and going through the technicalities, if you will. It might be better served if we did it as a training session rather than consuming a board meeting.
I think I agree with that. I think that it is better that, we've got 1, 2, 3 new board members that may not be familiar with the ordinance or the process. And you're right, that could take an hour and a half to go through that. So I'm thinking that you're right, it is not appropriate at a board meeting to do that. And that we could call a training session. Beth, again, we don't need this immediately. You need family time here. So perhaps, later in the summer, we can look at that.
Well, and the guiding documents, the handbook that was distributed to new members contains all of that information. So we could perhaps we could use that as our guidance. And anything that's outside of that, we can supplement. So, but in terms of the timelines and why something comes to you for a full investigation and why it comes to you for an extension, all of those can be found in there. And then from that, your experience looking at case summaries, perhaps the questions that come from there, we can explain through the board's practices, the investigators' practices.
And I don't want to cut off Mr. Cotler. I know he has his hand raised. I just, again, just reading the information, I just need points of clarity as far as the understanding, because I could interpret what's written differently than what majority of people on this call might interpret. And that's why I just am asking for that discussion. But I'm more than willing to have an outside meeting set up where we can go at length by questioning in regards to, the current policies and, statutes regarding this board's abilities as it relates to the complaint process. I just want a better understanding, especially when we were presented these recommendations. I just at the moment feel that I don't have a holistic picture, and I also do not have or know if I have the ability to ask particular things unless it goes to a full hearing, and just trying to understand the scope of what information that we get from these meetings that differ if we do go to a full hearing, where those we are getting, names, persons, etc. But again, I don't believe we can talk about this at this moment. So just trying to get an understanding.
Yeah, and if you could, in the meantime, read the information that was sent to you. Those reports are not for interpretation, they're fact. There's no interpretation that should be taken from those. Any interpretation would be taken if there was a hearing, but this isn't an opinion of an investigator. It is the facts based on an investigation. So I hope that clears that up, but I think that we, in fact, can hold a training, and maybe sometime in the summer, Beth, if we can maybe do that.
We anticipated a fourth member joining this class of board members, and that has not happened. And as a result, we've not scheduled any kind of formal training session with members. And so it's a good idea to do that. Perhaps we'll have a fourth member join us by then. But we're happy to do that. And
I just want to put a
explain.
point of clarity. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
I just want to put Dr. Brucio and Ms. Pittenger. What I mean by misinterpretations, I mean of the governing documents that were sent over to me, not of the interpretation of the recommendations by your investigators. And I do know that is not up for interpretation, that is based in facts. My question solely as far as the governing documents, as far as the interpretation. And I would hope that Mr. Ward would also be at these sessions, just for the clarity point, just from a legality standpoint, when I do ask those specific questions.
I'll be glad to attend.
Thank you, sir.
I believe we are. If there's any other discussion here under new business. Alrighty, hearing none. Our next board meeting will be Tuesday, April 23rd at 6 p.m. And again, this will be by Zoom. And you will get your reports probably a week or 10 days prior to the meeting. So keep your eye open from Ms. Pittenger, the report. And again, Beth, on behalf of this board, please accept our deepest sympathy. Is there anybody, Stephanie, that would like to make
Mark and Triss say hello. They say thank you and happy spring.
Back at you. Thanks so much. Anybody, nobody in the chat, FaceTime or any of those?
No, nobody else.
All right, thank you. Hearing that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Thank you, sir. Do I hear a second?
One second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. This meeting is officially adjourned at 6:52 p.m. and everybody have a great holiday season. I believe this is a long weekend for some, so happy holiday to you.
Same to you.
Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Aye.
Good night.